So I had a thought today to start yet another new series. I've got all kinds of ideas apparently. But I thought maybe that we could start a sort of news playlist on the channel. This could technically go under Philosophy Corner, but it's more like current events, news. Now, when I say news, I need to put a caveat here that I'm not talking about mainstream media here. I'm not talking about state-sponsored media. I'm talking about alt media, real news, right? Not fake news, as Trump would say. And the one that I go to the most, I mean, I got to be honest with myself here. I don't read newspapers for obvious reasons, but the one exception is Druthers. I love me some Druthers because it's a truth paper. It tries its best to deliver nothing but truthful, factual information. Now, these people are human, right? Just like we are. They make mistakes, but what they're not doing is inserting unnecessary misinformation or, God forbid, disinformation into the public realm, right? This is trying to educate the people and remind them of who they are and where they stand, as I say, on the totem pole of authority. Where are we? Do we know, right? To effect change in the world, you really have to start by knowing who you are, where you stand in the world, and really where are you at morally and ethically, right? I'm actually in the process of editing and rendering a video right now on the moral and ethical implications of ChatGPT, which is a whole other subject, right? But there are increasingly more and more of these sort of moral and ethical situations where, you know, as the people of the world, we really need to be representatives of the truth. And we have to guard it with everything that we have because if we don't, right, if we drop our guard for even a second, someone will inevitably swoop in and exploit that vulnerability, that weakness. So we have to stay steadfast, we have to stay strong, and we have to be advocates for the truth. Always, 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 always. When somebody's talking shit, they need to be told, right? They might think that they're telling the truth, that um, their minds are based in fact, but it not often is, unfortunately, especially for those that are still under the spell. And over the last few years, there's been a lot of learning lessons, obviously. Since 2019, our world has changed a lot. And despite the fact that the powers that wish to be want to reset us or reset the system, many of us have put this nonsense aside and have awakened. So forget about this great reset. It's bullshit anyway. It doesn't really affect us humans. This is the corporate world talking. So put that garbage aside, right? And let's focus more on the great awakening. The last few years have really been a blessing in disguise. The silver lining in all this is that we've awakened, right? Some of us were already aware of these things in the world, but it kind of solidified it a little bit, and it kind of lit a fire under our asses to say, we can't just tolerate this stuff anymore. We have to do something about it. We have to stop it here and now before it becomes a bigger problem. Uh, when these authoritarians and technocrats get a hold of this power over us, they're never going to let it go. So better to cut it off now, right? And Canadians, I'm speaking to you mostly here. Of course, I'm speaking to the international community as well. But Canadians we have something coming up now where we can actually affect a change in the way that the political system is structured here in the world. And I realize I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but I just want to finish my thought here. You know, this whole royalty thing, the kings and queens, right? This is stuff that children, uh, you know, do in their play. It's a matter of make believe, and just because these adults are playing this game doesn't make it any more real or valid. Uh, the queen and now this king, uh, his blood is no more pure than ours. He was not put in that position or soon to be position, hopefully not, by God, right? All of these claims need to be not only disputed, but they should not be given any credibility or validity whatsoever, because we are actually equals, right? According to natural law, according to what's in our hearts, we are all equals on this planet. So no one, no other human can tower over you in a form of authoritarian control, because we are equals. This is a fact, right? This is a fact of nature. This is a proven scientific fact. We are equals, right? Now, there's plenty of situations where people become enslaved. They fall into subservience. It still happens, and it boggles my mind how even just a few years ago, slavery was still a thing in certain countries. And let's not kid ourselves here. It is still very much present in many, many different forms. Look at the cobalt mines, right? The way that people are treated there. Not just cobalt, but a lot of these mines. The people that are digging up these minerals are working in deplorable conditions. And that's because they have these asshole authoritarians looming over them constantly, making their lives really, really hard to live. We all know this, that there's a very select few that are benefiting from the labor of the masses. And this needs to stop. And one of the things that would really help us as Canadians to stop this nonsense is preventing this supposed king from exerting any sort of force or power on us in a completely different country. This still, I can't get over the fact that in 2023, humans are still playing this game. It's ridiculous, and it's actually shameful. It's shameful that the people of this land and other lands and the world really are allowing this to happen. It's infuriating. But rather than just be upset about it, I'm doing what I can to better this situation, to better my world and your world and our world, and to speak the truth. And that's what I can do. Maybe you can do something else. Maybe you can do something better. Maybe you can do something more effective. Maybe you can do something like Shawn James and start your own newspaper to speak the truth. See, Shawn obviously is doing what he can. And I'm trying my best to do what I can by spreading the message, right? And continuing the work that he started for us. A lot of people ask me, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm just one person. First of all, you're not a person. That's a legal term. You're a human, right? You're either a man or a woman. I'm not going to get into the whole gender debate. That's another topic for another day, maybe. I'm actually not going to touch that one. But, you know, the men and women of this planet have human rights. They have natural rights according to natural law. Corporations and corporate entities have no rights. They might claim that they have rights under their, fictitious legal systems if they're, members of the bar, but that's not our society. If you're a lawyer or a judge or a cop or something like that, maybe it does apply to you and that is your society. But for the rest of us, this is not our society. Society is a tricky thing to begin with, but when you start implicating yourself with these sort of bureaucrats and policy enforcers and order followers, you're going to get yourself into a heap of trouble. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that and kind of preface my new video here with that information. I really hope that sincerely that you do take what I said to heart, because it's a big deal. And I think this, I don't know how it works, okay? I clearly, as you can see, I'm an anarchist. I don't really follow this sort of political circus. It's none of interest to me, and I find that it just wastes time. And I've got lots of other things I can do with my time. I've got a lot of life left to live, and I'm not going to waste it, you know, paying attention to what's going on in this ridiculous game. But something's going to happen in May. Forgive me, I don't have all the details. You can look it up. But Prince Charles is going to try to take over from where his mother left off. They're going to be some sort of an inauguration. I don't know how it works. All I know is that there's something happening in May where Canadians have a chance now to say, no, we don't want this system anymore. We don't want the Crown Corporation, you know, looking down on us in our lives. They have no business here, right? This land is for us. It's not for them, right? We got away from that system hundreds of years ago now, right? And in the States as well, they believe themselves to be free and they advocate for liberty, but I just don't see it. You've replaced your kings and queens with politicians, so you're no better off. It's still a feudalist system. It's still uh, starkly close to what it was back in the old world in Europe. So we fought. I mean, not we, not myself personally, but you know, our people fought. Our ancestors fought for us to be free and to get away from these oppressive systems. And here we are allowing it to recreate itself again. You know, it reminds me of the Hydra when you cut off one head and three more pop up. It's like, come on, let's just kill this frickin' thing once and for all and be done with it. And let's get back to actually, you know, living in peace and harmony and love with each other. And anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. What I wanted to do actually is to make little videos here and there to talk about some of the articles that I'm reading. Some of them are really interesting, and some of the facts that are coming into play now, things that we, you know, the truth seekers have been professing for years now, are finally starting to get some of the recognition and validity that they deserve. So I thought maybe today we could start with the back here, which I really enjoy. It's called the Absurdity Observer. Now, I don't know if I'm going to read every single one. We can try. It's not really that long. First of all, I really like this picture right here. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe a little too bright. It's essentially a satire of conspiracy theorist, which is this orange here on, oops, on this side. This one right here. He's basically trying to say to the other oranges that they're making us into juice, man. And the other ones are just laughing at him like, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. That would never happen. It's happening. It's happening. We're getting the squeeze for sure. So let's go through these and we'll discuss them. Maybe I'll pause between each one and kind of have a little, share a few thoughts and feelings on the subject. So first one here is government finds government not guilty of government overreach. Hilarious, right? Their internal investigation within their own corporation deemed that the Public Order Emergency Commission inquiry concluded that Trudeau was justified in his decision to invoke the Emergencies Act and freeze protesters' bank accounts. That's funny that the corporation that was guilty of overreach launched an internal investigation on themselves, and lo and behold, they found the Prime Minister not guilty. Go figure. Big surprise there, right? And I'm sure my sarcasm is palpable at this point. Next one, because that's just dumb. I'm not even going to comment on that. Roald Dahl's children's books have been rewritten to remove language deemed offensive by the publisher Puffin. So Puffin has deemed that the word fat, for example, has been cut from every new edition of relevant books. So what happens when you're talking about lipids? Can you still use the word fat? Gender-neutral terms have been added in places. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's Oompa Loompas are now small people instead of small men. Which is kind of weird because if they were actually small men, what's wrong with calling them small men? I don't know. I honestly think some people just have too much time on their hands to be thinking about these kind of things. Go over to other countries that are not as fortunate as us and see if they're pondering these sort of things. You'll be surprised to find out that they don't have time for this crap. They're too busy working and living their lives. UK's counter-terrorism program says interest in great literature is a sign of far-right extremism. Boy, this really belongs in the Absurdity Observer. They all do because this is absolutely absurd. The taxpayer-funded research noted that the works of William Shakespeare are key texts for white nationalists and supremacists. That sounds like something Trudeau would say. Other works of fiction that were flagged include The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien and George Orwell's 1984. Big surprise there that they want to ban that book, right? So many similarities. I mean, even Lord of the Rings, there are quite a few parallels in that book. You know, if you watch the movies, you'll see that there's certain times where you're like, that's eerily familiar to what we're experiencing right now. And Shakespeare, what the hell? Shakespeare. First of all, most kids these days wouldn't be able to read Old English. So they're not going to get anything out of that, let alone some notions of white supremacy and white nationalism. What the hell? Where do they pull this stuff out of? It's unreal. Here's another one that kind of pissed me off. I don't go to this restaurant anyway, but the nerve. Tim Hortons collected your data without consent, so you can now claim a free coffee and donut. I remember reading about this before. So basically, people that had an app, or it might have been a card, I'm not sure exactly what happened. It must have been an app, obviously, because they were geolocating people. This is the result of a 2022 class action lawsuit settlement for a 2020 joint investigation between the Federal Privacy Commissioner and provincial counterparts found that Tim Hortons had sold the geolocation data of its app users. The freaking nerve of these people. The people of Canada are supporting your business on their backs. They line up, right? They drive through every Tim Hortons. We're near a town here that has a population of about, 50,000 people, let's say, best case scenario. And there are probably 7 or 8 Tim Hortons in that one little town. And there's cars lined up around the drive-through every single day. If you even go in the restaurant, which again, I don't go there anymore, it's disgusting food and coffee anyway. But if you go in there, there's lineups at the counter too. So these are the people that are supporting your business. And you're going to sell their geolocation data to third parties? Where do you get the nerve? Who comes up with this idea and then it gets greenlisted? I don't understand how they could even get to that point. Like, the sad part is it's not going to stop people from going to Tim Hortons and getting this disgusting coffee and food. People just don't learn. When asking Google, can men oh my God. When asking Google, can men menstruate? Google's new answer is, having a period is not a feminine thing. Rewrite the school books. Apparently, periods are not feminine specific. And people of all genders menstruate. I'm not going to go there. Including non-binary people, agender people, and even plenty of men. So apparently men menstruate now. I wonder if women produce seminal fluid now, since they've reversed and everything. Menstruation doesn't change anything about your gender. It's just a thing that some bodies do, right? It's just a thing that some bodies do. It's not a big deal. You got blood coming out of your crotch. I'm sorry to be so graphic, but I'm going to say this after every single one of these, but it's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Let's move on. The FAA just telegraphed the fact that a substantial number of airline pilots have had serious heart damage after vaccine rollouts by widening the EKG parameters for pilots. This is scary, actually. So, not only have we seen doctors and athletes dropping dead, but there's been a few incidents of pilots as well getting ill mid-air. This is a whole other thing, though. Uh, the vaccines caused some heart problems in people. This is now known as a fact. But it says on October 24th, 2022, the FAA guide for aviation medical examiners quietly widened the EKG parameters for pilots beyond the normal range. So typically, a normal range, the PR, a measure of heart function, was changed for the first time ever from a max of 200 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds. That's a pretty huge increase there. And it says that here, this is a very wide range that accommodates people who have cardiac injury. So if you have cardiac injury, you're considered in the normal range now. Next, a study by Cleveland Clinic of over 51,000 participants finds that the more shots you get, the greater risk of COVID infection. Nothing surprising there. Those of us that have been doing our research already knew that. All participants were working age employees of the hospital. Health authorities in Victoria, Australia. Boy, I remember when at the height of the pandemic, things were just awful in Australia. I couldn't believe it. They were pretty bad here too, especially in the province of Quebec. But Australia, I thought things were bad in France, and then when we started to see what was happening in Australia, I couldn't believe it. How did we get to this sort of police state? It's unbelievable. Anyway, in Victoria, Australia, they have denied a mother of two a heart transplant for being unvaccinated. I've heard this story many times now. People being denied all kinds of surgeries, heart surgery, cancer treatment, diabetes. Basically, if you need an operation, they'll tell you if you are entitled to have one or not. Even though these are public services, they'll tell you, well, you didn't get the injection we wanted you to get, so fuck you, basically. And a lot of people are going to die as a result of this. She did not receive the vaccine because she relies on a ventricular assist device to help keep her ailing heart functioning and is concerned that taking the vaccines could increase her risk of heart conditions such as myocarditis and pericarditis. How is that not a reasonable concern? Even if you're in favor of these injections, imagine yourself being a person that already, or I'm sorry, even I still use these inappropriate words. Imagine yourself being this woman who has existing heart issues and the functioning of her heart is not working right to begin with, and we're going to go inject her with an experimental drug. How does that make any sense? How is that not her right to say, no, I don't want to take a chance, and I'd like to have my surgery now, because the surgery is proven to work, and these injections are not. It's that simple. A study by the Cleveland Clinic of, I already read that one. Due to a shortage of doctors, perhaps in part due to the firing of unvaccinated doctors, most likely, pharmacists across Ontario will soon be able to prescribe medication for 13 common ailments, including urinary tract infections, herpes, and pink eye. Nothing really to comment on there. They're all drug peddlers as far as I'm concerned anyway, so doctor, pharmacist, pediatrician, oncologist, whatever. They're kind of all in that same category, so not that big a deal for me, but obviously there's going to be some negative implications there. There always is, because there's always a hidden agenda. After the World Economic Forum in 2023 in Davos, a new analysis commissioned by Greenpeace International revealed the ecological hypocrisy of its attendees. I remember reading this, I couldn't believe it. While the WEF claims to be committed to the 1.5 degrees Celsius Paris climate target, its attendees, consisting of lobbyists, corporate bosses, and political leaders, arrived in droves of private jets. The research conducted by Dutch environmental consultancy CE Delft found that last year's World Economic Forum saw over 500 private jet flights arrive with meeting attendees. 53% of them were short-haul flights below 750 kilometers that could have easily been train trips. I don't see them taking a train for any reason, really, 'cause I don't know about that. It's terrible, don't get me wrong, but I don't see these rich assholes getting on a train like the rest of us. With 38% flying ultra short distances of under 500 kilometers. 500 kilometers is still a decent trip. That would probably take 4 or 5 hours in a car on the highway. But still, get in your limo instead. But they don't want that. Here's the kicker. The shortest flight recorded was only 21 kilometers, so someone thought that was perfectly acceptable. About a 23-minute car ride or a 1-hour bike ride. Sickening. Absolutely sickening. Oxfam's Survival of the Richest report finds that the richest 1% this is not a surprise at all, the richest 1% grabbed nearly 2/3 of all new wealth, worth $42 trillion since 2020. This is a huge increase compared to before the pandemic, when the richest 1% soaked up 50%. So from 50% to 66% of all the new wealth created. Again, this is in the land of fiction. The report also found that 95 food and energy corporations more than doubled their profits in 2022. I remember reading this across the board. It's really strange how inflation's never been higher. We just got out of a really bad, engineered pandemic, and lots of people lost their job. We were under lockdown and stupid mandates, and somehow these corporations doubled their profits in 2022. If that doesn't tell you something, if that doesn't put up a huge red flag, I don't know what will. Additionally, 95% of countries froze or cut taxes on corporations during the pandemic. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. The report concluded that excess corporate profits have driven at least half of inflation in Australia, the UK, and the US. Again, nothing super surprising there. It's kind of upsetting. Yes, it is angering, but it's nothing that we didn't already know. Some of us have come to the conclusion that cutting our own tax funding is in order. I can't recommend for anyone else to do that, but I can tell you with utmost certainty that these corrupt authoritarian corporations are no longer receiving a penny of my property, my hard-earned funds. Never again. Never again will my labor go towards funding wars, international wars, that will go towards funding the corrupt World Health Organization or the World Economic Forum, right? Trudeau can find his money elsewhere. He's not going to get it from me. And that goes the same for the provincial government and the municipal government. You are not getting a penny of my money ever again. And I don't care what the consequences are. I will fight you on all rounds, on all fronts, on all sides. I'm coming after you. In a must-watch viral video now banned from YouTube and Facebook, Project Veritas catches the director of research at Pfizer on a hidden camera, revealing that Pfizer is exploring manipulating COVID through directed evolution to make it more potent by infecting monkeys. Doesn't that tell you what their agenda is right there? This helps them predict what future variants might appear so that they can have customized shots sitting on the shelf ready to disseminate to the public. Or to just wait a year and throw them in the trash, right, Trudeau? This directed evolution of a pathogenic virus that has the potential to unleash a genuine monster virus and is a form of gain-of-function research that is prohibited in the U.S. So if it's prohibited in the U.S., then how is this corporation allowed to get away with that? It's almost like they're getting a pass somehow. The Ontario Court of Appeal has overturned the decision made last year that allowed a separated mother not to vaccinate her children, claiming misinformation was brought into the courtroom. The appeal court Justice Jonathan George has now given the decision-making authority to the father who plans on vaccinating the two children. It's just more proof of how corrupt the system really is. These people don't have our interests, our best interest in mind. If that's not already obvious enough, come on. Before the February 6th Ohio train derailment that resulted in the controlled burn of a plume of highly toxic chemicals, Norfolk Southern lobbied against safety rules. Railroads spent heavily while lobbying in Washington, according to records analyzed by the transparency organization Open Secrets. Norfolk Southern is among the biggest spenders, paying $1.8 million last year for the services of 36 lobbyists. On February 6th, hazardous chemicals used to make PVC plastics were burned off the derailed freight train, contaminating the soil and water, which resulted in thousands of fish and other animals dying, ill effects, and an increased risk of cancer for people living in the area. Yeah, I remember reading that too. They couldn't even drink their own water anymore. They had to basically evacuate. During the 2022 Surface Transportation hearing on urgent issues in freight and rail services, the president of Transportation Trades Department stated that in an effort to raise their profits, Class 1 freight trains have collectively shrank their workforce by 29% over the last 6 years. More evidence of corruption. In a way, it's not a bad thing that they're being so blatant about it now and they're doing this in the public eye, because it's just making them look bad. And I really hope that they keep it up for that reason, so that more people get turned on to their dirty ways. All right, we got 2 more to go. FDA quietly extended the end for the Pfizer study on heart inflammation after COVID vaccination in 16 to 30-year-olds by an entire year. How many people are going to die in that year? Despite Pfizer needing only a few months to complete their study and release the COVID vaccine back in 2020. Study 4591031 would be the only randomized control study on mRNA vaccine-induced myopericarditis and was supposed to be completed in June and published in December 2022. This isn't the first time Pfizer has done this. Their first ever study on the vaccine in pregnant women was completed in July 2022, but they have yet to release that study and data as well. So they just completed this study in July of 2022, but pretty much right at the start of these injections being released, they were pushing them on everyone, including pregnant women. And one of my points when I first heard about this was, what other scenario can you think of where pregnant women are encouraged while carrying a fetus, right, or a baby, they're encouraged to experiment medically on themselves and their child, their unborn child? What other situation would that ever happen? None. Because on every medication, on every supplement, it'll say, not advised for pregnant women or breastfeeding mothers or mothers that are breastfeeding their children. They're very careful about what they suggest for pregnant women because there's huge implications, obviously. But yet here, in this context, it's perfectly fine. We haven't finished the study yet, but go ahead. It's safe, we promise. How the fuck do you know that? How can you tell? My brother-in-law, his partner was pregnant at the time, and when this all happened, they were trying to push the vaccine at the hospital. Luckily, he was smart enough to say, no, I don't like where this is going. I don't feel comfortable with this. The answer is no. But that didn't stop them from pushing it on her. You know, the gall of these people to not know what the end result will be, what the outcome will be for the mother, for the child, for the family. It's deplorable. It's deplorable behavior to say, go ahead with it. Have faith in the science, right? If they actually believed in the science, there's no way in hell they would have ever suggested for any pregnant women, children, teenagers, anyone for that matter, to experiment on themselves without their full understanding of the implications, the results, and with full consent, without coercion, without duress. All right, the last one, a new study titled Limitations of the Food Compass Nutrient Profiling System, or Tenzi et al., studied the food compass. The nutrient profiling system is often touted by nutritionists as the most comprehensive science-based system to date. That's another word you got to take very lightly these days. Science-based. And they found that the chosen algorithm is not well justified and produces results that fail to discriminate for common shortfall nutrients, exaggerate the risks associated with animal source foods, and underestimate the risks associated with ultra-processed foods. We caution against the use of food compass. Okay, if that's not disturbing enough, listen to this. Apologize for that. On a scale of 1 to 100, okay, with 100 being the healthiest food you can consume. Check this out. Frosted mini wheats was given an 87. Frozen yogurt, 80. Lucky Charms, guilty. I like my Lucky Charms, but I know they're not good for me. Lucky Charms, 60. Okay, here's the kicker. Boiled eggs and canned pineapples, 51. So Lucky Charms are healthier than boiled eggs, apparently. And here's the biggest one. Ground beef, 26. Now, I am not going to proclaim that ground beef is necessarily good for you. Is it worse for you than Lucky Charms? I think not. With the amount of sugar and processed materials in Lucky Charms and mini wheats, which was given an 87, frozen yogurt, canned pineapples, I don't know what's up with that. Is it the radiation level? I don't know, too acidic. I don't know what their reasoning is because it makes no sense. But 26, come on, come on. Or 51 for boiled eggs. My goodness, how long have humans been eating eggs? And all of a sudden they're worse for you than Lucky Charms? Come on. Come on, have some critical thinking skills, people. These results are not surprising given the level of regulatory capture going on in the food industry. Last year, a study by Cambridge University titled Conflicts of Interest for Members of the 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, Malon et al., found that 95% of the committee members had conflicts of interest with food and/or pharmaceutical companies. That says it all. 95%. 95% of the committee members. Think about that. Let me just repeat that again. 95% of the committee members had conflicts of interest with food and/or pharmaceutical companies. So that's some food for thought for you. We'll end it there for today because this video is already longer than I wanted it to be. But I got to give full credit, full props to Druthers. Everything I've read to you today was from the Druthers newspaper. I highly encourage you to get it. It's available everywhere now, as far as I know, not just in Canada. It's available in the United States and internationally. Great, great, great publication. I love it. I love Shawn James and his team for putting this together and spearheading such an amazing initiative. Without this paper, I fret to even think about where we would be in society, where our heads would be at if we didn't have all this wisdom and information available to us, because there's some really important stuff in there that everybody should know. And of course, the sub-headline here says it all. Truth, love, and freedom. Three things that we should all stand for and defend with our lives at all costs, because without these three things, this is not a world that we want to live in. Trust me. The truth must be heard, love must be had by everyone, and freedom. Freedom is the basis for most of our lives, what we consider our communities and our society, and it's all based on freedom, right? Just like I was saying at the beginning, we got away from these oppressive systems hundreds of years ago now, and here we are back in the same boat again, because people are not defending the truth, love, and freedom of their land, right? And I just want to say one more thing. When I talk about Canada, okay, I'm not talking about political Canada here. I'm not talking about the system of Canada, and certainly not the corporation of Canada in capital letters. I'm talking about the land itself, the beautiful land that we live on, that those of us that are fortunate enough to have been born here embrace and we love and we defend the land. And the other side of Canada is the people, right? These are the two things that make Canada what it is. It has nothing to do with the political agenda. It has nothing to do with the crown. Canada is not those things, okay? Canada in capital letters, maybe, but I'm talking about, and I want you to recognize that when I say Canada with a capital C and all lowercase letters, I'm talking about the land and the people, the two most important things that define Canada.